Sally Yates is going to become a national name after today, her hearing in the United States Senate. Good morning, Pierre Thomas.
Good morning.
So, do we know what she's going to say today, or are we all waiting for a bombshell?
Well, waiting to hear what she's going to say. Our guidance is that she will talk in more detail about what led her to be concerned enough to reach out to the White House and say, hey, Mr. Flynn is not being forthcoming with you about his discussions with the Russians, and maybe you should check him. But there's some limitations on what she can talk about because the Russian investigation is ongoing, and also how she knew about what he was saying is classified as well because it involves secret surveillance.
How much of her testimony is going to be tainted in the eyes of the beholder because of her dramatic firing as acting attorney general?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I mean, she clearly is an appointee of the Obama administration. She was someone who did not believe in the first executive order banning some Muslims coming into the country. She refused to allow the Justice Department to defend the lawsuits being filed against those executive orders. So she was fired by the Trump administration. So there's some of that. But I think the interesting thing today will be it'll be the first time we've heard her talk about concerns related to the White House that ultimately led to the White House to either fire Flynn or have Flynn resign.
Yeah, but the timeline is interesting. Supposedly, the timeline, she told the White House, the transition team, months before they ever fired him that, hey, this is going on, and only after it came to light from news reports did they act on it.
It's a little bit more condensed than that. So the sanctions against Russia are announced by President Obama. The allegation is that shortly after those sanctions were announced, Flynn was on the phone with the Russian ambassador talking about these sanctions to some degree. So then the transition is still going on. Then after Trump becomes president, apparently then Yates, after repeated assertions by, I guess, Vice President Pence and others that Flynn had not discussed the sanctions in any details with the Russians, did Yates go to the White House and say, Mr. President, or to the White House Chief Counsel, that the story that they had gotten from Flynn might not have been accurate.
Yeah. So all of this political intrigue, scandal, right? Good water cooler talk, but does this rise to the level of anything other than just interesting and or political sort of one-upsmanship?
Well, it's going to be interesting. To be honest with you, I don't think we know the answer yet. Everyone is curious as to why Flynn apparently misled the White House. Why did he do that? What would be the reason behind that? And until we know that question, I think the speculation will continue.
Donald Trump still supports Michael Flynn, does he not?
As far as we can tell, he believes, look, it was perfectly within Flynn's capacity in the job to have discussions with foreign leaders. He was going to be the national security advisor, so it would stand to reason that he would want to get to know these foreign leaders that he would be communicating with. The question is, why did he apparently give the White House information that he had not talked about the sanctions when he in fact had?
All right, there you go. Pierre Thomas following it all for us, ABC News senior justice correspondent in Washington, D.C. Pierre, thanks for checking in.
Pleasure.
6:56, Big 550.